Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Open Source Podcast. Today is Monday, June 11th, 2018. My name is Jeremy Hess, Community Manager at Cloudify. Today we're going to be speaking with our friends at AT&T about combining edge computing, serverless, and Kubernetes for intelligent transportation systems for a project called Edgility, or Agility at the Edge. We will be discussing ONAP and Kubeless, as well as one of the latest Linux Foundation projects, Akraino Edge Stack, and the value of this open source project. We have with us today Ed and Rozin, as well as Itamar Eshet, product managers at AT&T, as well as Cloudify's Swiss Army knife solution architect, Shay Naeh. Okay, Ed, then why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks. Great to be here again in the Cloudify AT&T podcast. I'm leading the AT&T D2 product team in Tel Aviv, and we are heavily involved with eComp and ONAP, and now with this exciting joint project together.
That's great. Thanks for that quick intro. Then, okay, and Itamar, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, Jeremy. I'm Itamar Eshet, product manager at AT&T, working in the Domain 2.0 group, mainly dealing with ONAP, and was leading this initiative of this common project between Cloudify and AT&T.
Great. And Shay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
So my name is Shay Naeh. I am a solution architect, and I work on actually initiatives and large orchestration projects. And in this example, we actually created a very nice and under tight schedule demo of orchestrating serverless environment with Kubeless and Akraino and some other good nitties, and we'll explain it in the next questions.
Great, thanks for that, Shay. So, Eden, why don't you go ahead and give us some background on the 5G Edge and serverless joint initiative here that we're talking about?
Yes. So it's very exciting times now because everybody are talking about 5G. Everybody are trying to bring much more bandwidth to the subscriber, give some innovative services like artificial intelligence, connected cars, and others. And we thought that we can utilize some of AT&T internal initiative and external initiative. You know that AT&T are changing its culture, starting to lead some very important open source like ONAP and Akraino. Akraino is an open source, a newborn open source for Edge Stack, the ability to orchestrate an edge cloud. So we said, why not to use Akraino as our edge stack, bring serverless technologies, and to see how we can innovate around these two buzz in the industry and do some very interesting stuff. So we called you guys and we said, let's join hands and try to bring something very interesting.
Great. Yeah, I mean, really try to bring that open source flavor here, all these different applications working together. It's really great. And so we're talking about the edge and serverless and getting all to these almost buzzwords, right? So Itamar, why don't let's break down the buzzwords just a little bit. Can you just explain to us a little bit about what edge means, what serverless means here, and how putting these two together really brings out the benefits of this project?
Okay, so edge, as a matter of fact, is a fact in the industry. It is part of any blueprint of 5G network, even now in 4G. The main benefits of the edge is to bring the computing power as close as possible to the end consumer to overcome the latency problem. This is one of the benefits of the edge. On the other hand, since edge is far from the data center, it's somewhere in the network, it has a capacity problem. The resources on the edge are scarce, and you need to have very good utilization, very optimal utilization these resources, and this is where the serverless comes into play. So one of the benefits of the serverless is that it is ephemeral. You know, you don't allocate resources for a long time. You just deploy whatever you need to deploy. It runs and it terminates and leaves the resources to use by another for another usage. Okay, this is the main benefit of serverless. The other benefit of serverless is that it is very simple and quite straightforward to deploy. So, and this is one of the main issues of AT&T. Okay, so you don't have time now for a long time project and millions of and budgets of millions. You want to bring the value to the customer as fast as possible, and with serverless solve this problem in a very good way. The footprint is very small. The development and deployment time is very very fast, and it is kind of a win-win situation for the use cases that it fits for.
Yeah, I wanted to add on top of it that you know, in the next few years, the main cloud, the big cloud of Amazon, the central cloud, is gonna broken to smaller clouds, edge clouds, because latency is very important to some specific applications like autonomous cars, etc. And the edge will play an important role in this latency, you know, short latency between the edge and the devices.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we progress with this, talking more about the project itself, Shay, can you give us the aspect of Cloudify's open source orchestration in this project?
Yeah, so Cloudify is an orchestration platform that is based on Tosca, topology and orchestration for cloud applications. And in this actually project, we had to build everything from scratch. So we orchestrated 3 different edges and 1 more central cloud actually to deploy ONAP and orchestrate everything from it. Each edge platform actually used Akraino for resource management. On top of Akraino, we installed Kubernetes, and on top of it, we installed Kubeless, which is the FAS, the function as a service platform. And on top of it, we installed the application actually, and more about it in the next questions about the application, but we had to tie everything together and run dependencies. So for example, when we install A that depends on B, for example, I cannot install applications if Kubeless is not installed. So I need to orchestrate dependencies between the different components, and what can run in parallel runs in parallel. And let's differentiate between the provisioning and the lifecycle management of the infrastructure, which includes the Akraino and Kubernetes, and the function as a service and the application. So I described mainly now the infrastructure. On the application part, we deployed an IoT gateway, which connects to different functions, and we can create functions on the fly. So for each car type, actually, we created a different function that supported it and connected it to messages that were coming from an IoT gateway, which actually got simulated messages from different car types.
Very interesting. And Eden, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on how this worked on AT&T's side?
So yes, what we did on AT&T is creating the orchestration. We used Cloudify as an orchestrator. Also, Cloudify is part of ONAP, is part of the service orchestration layer in ONAP. So we use that part to orchestrate the function as a service. and the orchestration of the functions themselves. And also some of the use case is the ability to do the scaling. So we developed the IoT gateway, we developed the functions, and we used Cloudify for the orchestration of the function and the orchestration later on of what operation calls day one, the ability to do scale, the ability to react to something. And in this use case, we know that we have many type of different kind of a reaction that autonomous or connected car would have. Some of them are critical, and this is not what we are simulating here. Some of them are more at the informational layer, the notification layer, the hazard layer, and these can be simulated via the serverless edge kind of a deployment, and this is what we aim to do.
Great. And Itamar, actually, I wanted to ask you, what was the end result of this project so far? Like, what have you guys been able to deploy and shown that it's been successful?
So basically, the main achievement in my perspective is that first we managed to extend Akraino platform with serverless capability. This was a capability that was not part of the initial blueprint of Akraino, and this is something that we are going to contribute to Akraino platform. And we extended the Akraino platform also with an IoT gateway contribution. This will be part of that, and with all the event triggering infrastructure that is part of it. Part of it is of course, the serverless platform that we chose was Kubeless, which is works on top of Kubernetes. That is part of Akraino, and the other one is these two Verne, MQ, and Kafka, which is two of message buses and event processing mechanisms. This is something that is going to be contributed as is. And of course, using Cloudify as an orchestrator, we were managed to deploy all of these stack, to automate the deployment of all of these stack and the deployment of serverless functions on the fly. I think that this is the two main achievements that we have, and of course this is all wrapped together with this interesting use case of kind of autonomous cars or intelligent transport system use case that we show, that demonstrates and that all of these capabilities all together.
Just wanted to add on top of it, Cloudify, many times surprises me that, when encountering a new unexpected scenario, it can cope with it. So even though we didn't actually do on the fly all the serverless, creation, provisioning, it was quite easy to add it to Cloudify. And that was nice that Cloudify can accommodate it, so every new technology is easy to add to Cloudify. Cloudify is actually architected in a way that it has a core engine and plugins, and if you want to extend it, you write a plugin to interface with a new technology, and that's what we did this time.
Yeah, that's great. And I actually wanted to follow up on, you were talking earlier about Kubernetes as well, and I wanted to get a little bit into that if we can, because we're talking about Edge and serverless, which are really these future-looking technologies, and it's really great. And Kubernetes has really been very important in architecture today. Yeah, so why don't you, Shai, go ahead and give us a little bit about where exactly Kubernetes is being used in the architecture in this project.
Yeah, so actually Kubernetes Cloudify has actually different involvements with Kubernetes. So it's being used by ONAP to deploy Kubernetes, and we took actually this blueprint to deploy the different edges, the Kubernetes on the edges. Now, Cloudify can provision a Kubernetes cluster But not only this, it can provision workloads on top of it. And Cloudify acts also as a Kubernetes provider, which means that if Kubernetes itself needs to scale out, for example, Kubernetes its scheduler say, I need another node to add to the cluster, so it will call the Kubernetes provider, which is Cloudify in this case. And the Cloudify provider can support multiple clouds and provision VMs or even other resources, network storage, and give it back to Kubernetes. So Cloudify role or Cloudify play with Kubernetes is like a sandwich. So we sit, on top of it to provision workloads, on top of it microservices. We sit beneath it to actually add more resources to Kubernetes itself. And we can deploy a Kubernetes cluster or multiple clusters and connect between them. So in this example, we already used an existing blueprint that brings up Kubernetes, and on top of it, ONAP, to do the same with the edges. So we brought up Kubernetes and provisioned the application on top of it.
And so in this architecture, we're using every component of ONAP is being run in a separate container?
Yeah, actually, after you bring up the Kubernetes, there are two blueprints. After you bring up the Kubernetes cluster, there is another blueprint that provision all the microservices on top of an existing cluster. And ONAP exists of something like 70 containers and 22 different ONAP applications.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so going back to you, Eden, how about if you give us a little bit of a future look into what this project means going forward, and what else we can, see from or expect to see from AT&T going forward?
All right. So first of all, this was the first phase of the project, of the Edgility project, and we are very excited with the results. So all the things that we developed together, we are going to contribute. We are going to contribute them to Akraino, and they are going to be part of Akraino going forward. Akraino, as I said, it's a newborn Edge Stack open source that AT&T contribute to it, and I know that others are already there, like the Huawei, like ZTE, Tech Mahindra, and others. We are going to contribute with a use case to ONAP. We know that the parts that we use, as SDC, Cloudify orchestration, and other parts are already there. So we have everything. So the entire use case is going to open source. This is one. The second is that we are doing this podcast. We are going to follow with a blog post, and later on with some demonstration in the ONS in Amsterdam at the end of September, and later 2 weeks later in the SDN and NFV World Congress in Hague, and we are opening the floor to others to review this and to contribute. We have our own thoughts on how we can continue contributing to this and make, for example, scale out connected to other initiatives within AT&T, like Akraino, if you heard about Akraino AI, which is another open source for AI platform to streamline the ability of using machine learning. So we think about these kind of improvements to our serverless edge project.
All right, great. So it's been a really interesting conversation. It's short, sweet, and really good to get a good understanding of what this means and where it's bringing us. Is there anywhere, Eden, that you want to let the listeners know they can reach you guys, or part of the community, or get to the source code or anything like that?
So the source code, we are going to, again, to contribute this to Akraino and to ONAP. We need to think together on how we are going to make the entire project visible and accessible. If someone is interested on the entire thing and not on parts of what we are going to contribute. And yes, they do, of course, everybody can contact Itamar and myself directly, and I'm sure that they can contact you, and then they can contact us as a team. Yes.
And I'm going also to participate in the ONAP Beijing conference, so I'm going to talk about it.
Perfect. So yeah, from our side, you can anyone can reach us at cloudify.co, and we're happy to answer questions. And I want to thank you guys very much, Aiden, Itamar, and Shay, for joining me today on the Open Source Podcast. And good luck with the future projects, and it's looking really good. So it's very exciting to see what the future could bring here. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.